Hi, I'm Monty Seltz. I'm the drive-in service manager for M&D Distributors on North Shepherd. I want to talk to you today about injectors in a 6.0 and the hostile environment they have to live in, and things that you need to do to make these injectors last long in the customer's vehicle and so they don't come back on you. So before I get into that, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Monty again, and this is my car they made for me, and I'm located at the North Shepherd store. Another thing I want to tell you is that we're a Alliant Power distributor, and we can sell you diagnostic tools. And the reason I'm telling you that, and some people may balk on this, but we use OEM tools, and if you give your techs OEM tools, they'll be more confident in their diagnostics. And that's a big deal. So I highly recommend them, and we use them. And also Alliant Power, we have GM, Chrysler, and Ford. So we can provide those to you. Another thing is Alliant injectors. We've been using Alliant injectors since 2008. I like them, I'm comfortable with them, and they just seem to last for me. But I also want to tell you is, in the beginning, we all went through a learning curve. I went through a learning curve. So several years ago, I made a list of things that we do in our shop to keep these things from coming back and also to stay out there longer and survive in that hostile environment. So, we've been using them since 2008. I like them. Something I also want to show you is the new things that Alliant has improved on these injectors. You get a new spool valve, you get a new connector, and new coils. And that's big, especially that spool valve. 24-month warranty, unlimited mileage. That's a Ford application. Again, I've been using them since 2008. I want to tell you something about the 6.0s. And I'm going to keep it very basic and very simple. Up here, high pressure oil from 500 pounds could go over 3,000 pounds right here. This is fuel in our shop. I'll talk about it later. Idling, minimum fuel pressure I want to see in that fuel rail is 62 pounds. So this is your nozzle. This is what actually sprays it in the cylinder. This is a valve opening pressure of 3,100 pounds. So it will not move unless you pressurize that valve above 3,100 pounds. And when it lifts up, it sprays the fuel into the cylinders. Inside here is a 7-to-1 amplifier piston. So 500 pounds times 7 is 3,500 pounds. And at 3,500 pounds, that's more than 3,100 pounds this valve lifts. That's why they tell you have to have about 500 pounds for this engine to start. And I know that was very simple. It's more complicated, but that's what you need to know on that. You can't see it, but there's a spool valve in there. And here it is right there. And I want to try to explain to you, there's not much movement in here. In fact, it's only moved 17 thousandths. And look, just show you how much movement's in that spool valve. So remember, there's not a lot of movement in there. Okay, let's get back to our list. M&D parts required for 6.0 injectors replacement. First thing on the list is fuel additive. I'm old school. Back in the day, you could just throw a set of injectors in an engine and be done with it. Not today. When you put a set of injectors in, you have to check everything else and make sure that injector needs everything it needs to run. So, back to this, we put fuel additive in every injector repair. Like I said, old school. In the old days, we'd call a set of injectors green. And when they needed a break-in period, so we put fuel additive in it. Today's technology, there is no break-in, but even Ford tells you, anytime injectors are changed, fuel additive should be added to the fuel filter and fuel tank. We do not put it in the fuel filter, we put it in the fuel tank. And I've been using this many years. Okay, next thing on the list is the valve cover gasket. We sell and install Alliant Power valve cover kits. Good quality, good price, and we change these on every repair. I know these things are reusable, but they're getting old. All these 6.0s are getting old, so you want this truck coming back with an oil leak and an unhappy customer. Next thing on the list is Raycor fuel filter kit. I cannot stress how important it is to use OEM filters. And when I say OEM, I'm talking Racor. You have to understand, Racor built these filter systems for this engine. So when I tell you I use OEM filters and I use a Racor, that's what came in that engine. Next thing, fuel cap. Nothing big here. They get broke, cracked, wore out over the years. We can sell you this. And again, that's a Racor. Oil filter. Again, like I said, we only use OEM, and it's Racor. And there's the part number for the oil filter. Now, this is where I'm probably going to get in trouble. Right here, in my opinion, that's going to damage the injectors. In fact, I call it an injector killer. And the reason I do that, and I'll discuss it and show you later what's going on, is this allows air in the oil. Anybody's worked on diesel, they always tell you can't have air in your fuel. Well, today, especially on these design injectors, you don't want air in your oil. Air in your oil would damage that injector. Another thing these things can do, I've had them where they won't even start. In fact, I'm going to show you an example of just that. Here's a picture. Customer had this truck towed to me, will not start. I walk out there, I see this on it, I tell the customer, I'm not going to hook to it until I change this. And he said, hey, I just had my oil filter oil changed. I said, that's no problem. I'm just going to convert it back to OEM, Racor, and Racor cap. And when I did that, that engine started. So the only thing wrong with that entire, keeping it from starting, it had the incorrect oil filter on it. And again, I'll show you why, because well, I'll tell you right now, the drain valve wasn't fully closed. So the oil was bypassing this valve, and the oil was going right back into the crankcase. So again, do not use these. They'll destroy injectors. They're not good for your engine. You won't get complete oil filtration. No start, black smoke, misfires, you name it. And air in the oil. Again, that's my opinion. Okay, next thing is AP0028, and that's the O-rings you need to reseal these guys. I'll flip this over right here. This is on the driver's side. If this was a passenger side, you would see an ICP sensor right here. That's where the ICP sensor goes on the passenger side. Rear plug, a rear tube, that one sits right here. And I want to explain that to you is every time we do an injector, we replace this rear tube. Reason being, this keeps the hydraulic noise out of that IC high pressure oil system. That spring can get weak, the ball can get eroded. Change it every time. It can really affect the way these injectors run. Remember, you don't want to starve them for oil, or that'll destroy them also. This is the front plug everybody talks about. It sits right here. Here's a picture of one that's blown. And see, this will cause a no start. So you can take these seals right here out of kit AP0028 and you can reseal them just like this one's been resealed. If this is damaged or you've misplaced it, we can also sell you one that's already been sealed and goes right back in there. Another thing I want to talk to you about, 03, 04 early. It doesn't have this wavy rail in it. It has a straight pipe, and this valve sits right there. And there's a little tool you slip in there and it pops out. And basically it's the same thing as this guy. It dampens the oil pressure in there, the high pressure oil. Now this one, you probably cannot see it, but there's a wire stuck in here. And this particular valve, it was causing, it had a brand new set of injectors installed. And was misfiring on a cylinder bank, and when that wire in there was causing misfires. And here's a picture of it so you can see it better. That's this valve with a camera down in there. You can see that wire stuck in there. So on the early 04, 03 models, always inspect that. If you don't see anything there, take a small pencil or a small screwdriver and push it down on that valve and make sure it moves freely. If it's not seating properly, Ford still sells those. Replace it. They don't cost that much. Okay. Next thing on the list Rear standpipe we talked about. The front, okay. Fuel plugs or fuel banjo bolts. 6.0, every cylinder head you'll see a pipe go to this bolt. This is not a banjo bolt. This is a check valve, and its job is to keep constant fuel pressure in that cylinder head. And here's some examples, like this one right here. The valve's completely gone. I just wonder where that went. Here's another one, an older one. So I'm going to give you the symptoms when these valves are defective. And I saw this years ago, and I was having a misfire in a cylinder bank. Everything had been replaced, new injectors. So I knew it was a fuel issue. So what I did, I took this valve and put it in the other head, and I swapped the valves. And the misfire followed this valve. And the symptoms that we've seen over the years is when this valve goes bad, or it's restricted, or that valve inside is stuck all the way down, or you find rust particles in there, rubber shavings in there. When they're defective, it'll affect the two middle cylinders, and I have no explanation for that. Another thing they'll do, you're cruising along at 45 miles an hour, 50 on a flat surface, and you can feel that engine start dropping cylinders. But you can apply throttle, and the misfire goes away. Well, that's the two symptoms of this valve. These things are cheap. They're very inexpensive. They can cause a lot of problems with the injectors. So we replace them every time we do a set of injectors. Or if we do one-on-one bank, we always replace it on that bank. Next on the list is the seals for it. And we can sell you the seals. Very simple. Okay. Now, flip this back over. This is a kit, AP0070. And what this is, it has 4 O-rings. It also has instructions with pictures. It's very simple. There's no reason you not to do this. And what this is, like on this one here, this is a used one. These things get loose over the years. Sometimes they flop around. You can even feel them moving up and down. So what you want to do, we sell you this tool, AP0069. Goes right here, and you unscrew it. And what you're unscrewing is this nut right here, and then you take this out, and there's the O-ring sits in here. Install a new O-ring, inspect it right here for grooves or damage. And if this is damaged, we can sell you another one. We stock these. Put this back in, look at your instructions, tighten it down to specifications. The reason we do this, there's a lot of movement in here, and we don't want movement. Every time an injector's fire, we don't want that thing moving around there. If you do, it'll start eating away at that O-ring in there. Another problem is, if you don't reseal this, they'll leak. They'll leak right around here, right around here. So you're going to have hot, high-pressure oil spraying down right here, and it will erode that O-ring. Again, it's very easy. You already have it off. It's cheap. It's mandatory to reseal these. Okay, oil filter drain valve. Very overlooked valve. Here's that valve I was telling you about. Using the correct proper oil filter, proper cap, when you put everything back together, it closes that. And that's what you want to do. Then when you change the oil, you take the filter out, this drains the oil that's in this canister back into the crankcase. So, oil filter cap, oil filter stem. Just for video, I have everything out. I'm going to slide this out of the way. This guy sits right here. Okay, it pops in and out, easy to replace. So what you do, and I tell my techs, all 6.0s have a built-in starter button. You can see that connector right above the air conditioning blower motor. You squeeze that, twist, and that comes out, and there's a center probe in it, and that's your starter button. You can hook a starter button there too, or you can take this wire, thread it underneath the vacuum motor hoses, and reach over there and touch it on the positive side on the passenger battery, and you can spin, and the engine will spin over for you. So, with this back in this position, but for the video, I'm going to show you what we tell our techs is with the take a screwdriver, turn it upside down, and push that valve closed, just like that. And then by using your starter button, you're going to fill this canister up to about halfway, 3/4 of the way, and then you're going to wait. And what you're doing, you're making sure this valve is sealing and this check valve is sealing right here. If it doesn't, then oil drains out. When the customer drains it out, oil drains down and now you have air in it. So the customer cranks it up, it fills the S up, you've got the air, it goes through the high pressure pump, goes through the rear ICP pipe, into the manifold, through here, and that air bubble hits right here, blows the O-ring out. And having air in the fuel, the ICP pressure is going to spike up and down, and again, same thing, it's going to eat that O-ring out of here. So, mandatory, everybody forgets about that little valve, but it will knock out a set of injectors in a hurry. So, always test that. Again, these are cheap, and I'm sure Wayne will start putting them on the shelf. Next thing, fuel regulator. Everybody's heard about the new regulator with a blue spring. Here's a picture of the blue spring. The lower one is original, and this is that blue spring that comes in this kit. I want to tell you, in our shop, idling with a fuel gauge hooked to it, it has to have a minimum of 62 pounds of fuel pressure idling in this shop. Also, when you go drive it, your fuel pressure will dip down under a load, but it'll come right back up quickly. If you cannot get 62 pounds of fuel pressure idling in the shop with a new kit and new Raycor fuel filter, don't even bother test driving. You've got to get that fixed. Because if you run these things when low on fuel pressure, you're going to destroy this injector. So again, clean fuel, no air, and plenty of it. So check your pressure. Next thing is I want to tell you how clean you have to get this stuff before you bring it. You put it back together. Things that you can't see with your eye can destroy that injector. A piece of grit you can't even see with your eye will get hung up in here and destroy this injector, and it could even destroy the piston in that cylinder. So again, I give my techs 2, 3, 4 cans of this on every repair because I want them to clean everything. Now, speaking of that, if you're working on a 6.0, you need to have this tool. In fact, it's mandatory. These injectors sit into a cup. This thing sits into a cup in the cylinder head. And that's what these things are for, to clean that. That cup needs to be spotless before you put that injector back in that bore. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples, pictures, of an injector installed in a bore that it's not clean. And what you're looking at is it's burnt. And because we didn't get a seal right here, engine compression, fire, heat goes up through here and starts cooking this injector. Eventually it'll burn that O-ring out. In fact, here's a picture of one. This injector wasn't properly cleaned or installed. We got compression, fire, comes up through here, burns that O-ring out, and right here, remember, there's 62 pounds of fuel pressure idling. So, fuel pressure goes through here, runs down here, around this seal, this copper gasket that's no longer sealing, and right into the cylinder. That can cause knocking, engine damage, gray smoke. It can even lock the engine up because so much fuel fills up the piston. Again, mandatory. We stock them. Part number is AP0085. You have to have this tool to work on 6.0s. Okay, that's it. Again, this is Monty with M&D Distributors on North Shepherd. If you have any problems, just give us a call. And again, thank you very much for listening to this video.